trust them with the ability to secure these perimeter. They ought to be empowered enough to be able to give the authority on their comms to issue a hold. I don't understand that. With that, I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields. And I'm going to say this because I have thoroughly enjoyed both of your testimony today. And there are a lot of guys up here on both sides of the aisle that are charged about this, that their emotion is not intended to communicate a lack of trust in the Pennsylvania State Police, or, I mean, you're being incredibly helpful today. Some of the things that we've discovered from your testimony have brought some frustration to our folks, and I hope you'll understand it in that context, that it's the energy is not directed at you. The failure to set up appropriate communication systems and to make decisions when they become aware of someone pointing a rangefinder is what's got people upset. And that's on Secret Service. So I just wanted to make sure y'all heard that from me.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I was amped up a little bit, I concur. So greatly respect what you're doing.
You. I now recognize Ms. Lee for 5 minutes of testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing and for organizing this committee's trip to Butler, Pennsylvania. For us, being on the ground in Butler, Pennsylvania yesterday made clear the severity of the security failures on Saturday, July 13th. Those failures that almost allowed former President Donald Trump to be assassinated. Unfortunately, what has followed that failed assassination attempt is an erosion of public trust related to those responsible for keeping the president and the attendees of the rally safe. We've heard that because of a sloped roof, law enforcement was not able to safely secure the area that day. We've heard reports that certain officers abandoned their posts due to weather conditions. We've heard the Secret Service attempt to shift blame to state and local law enforcement, asserting that they failed to secure certain areas in the perimeter. Secret Service Chief Cheatle's resignation this morning is the first of many steps that need to be taken, and today's hearing is just the beginning of our process to get clear, accurate information about this issue, about the failures associated with that day, and ensure that not only Congress, but that the American public get the answers that they deserve about these events. Mr. Yoes, I'd like to start with you. The Secret Service is always the lead in providing security for these types of events that involve one of their protectees, but they clearly rely on their partnerships with state and local law enforcement as they move to different locations around the country. Are you concerned that former Director Cheatle's comments to ABC News, which many people heard as blame shifting to local law enforcement, could undermine the level of trust between state and local authorities and Secret Service when they come to communities around America?
Yes, I absolutely do, and our organization actually issued a press release stating just that. Our relationship, it's impossible for a federal agency to do their function without including local law enforcement. That's a given. And that relationship is built on trust. And when comments were made, like what made on ABC, then we felt the need to call her out on it.
And do you believe that the federal government's statements to the public, to the American people after this attempted assassination have helped or harmed public trust in law enforcement overall?
You know, I'll say this. The very powers that we have, or the ability to do our job as law enforcement officers, is directly related to trust. And in an investigation, there's a fine line between what you do in order to protect an investigation and also be accountable to the public you serve. And when you don't walk that fine line, then it does create distrust, and it does cause a lot of confusion. A lot causes people to fill in their own blanks, and as a result, this is what we see. Sharing accurate information is important to keep everyone informed so that it doesn't run in different directions.
And as the American people wait for an after-action report, what can or should law enforcement agencies at any level be doing to address concerns about transparency and protect that public trust?
Well, I'll start right here. I mean, you have the Pennsylvania State Police, it filled in a lot of gaps that should have been filled in a long time ago. This is information that should be known to everyone. It is, essential facts. It doesn't change. It is what it is, and sharing this information lets everyone know exactly what occurred and gives us some insight of things that we need to correct.
And you've been here now throughout this day, throughout questioning from a number of members of this committee. As this committee continues to investigate the failures that resulted in this shooting, what are some of the key questions that you believe should be asked about the assassination attempt, as well as the management and organization of Secret Service more broadly?
Well, again, I have to be upfront in the fact that I have no direct knowledge to this incident or things that unfold. I'll just speak in just general terms. The first question that I think we all need to ask is, with so many elevated positions available, what steps were taken to protect those assets? I don't know the answer to that, but there were a lot of places. I mean, we learned a lot of lessons going back to President Kennedy's locations create unique problems. And as a result, they should have been part of any action plan. I'm not saying they weren't. I'm just saying that we see the end result of what happened here, so obviously we have a failure there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back and now recognize the gentleman in whose district this tragedy occurred, fine representative from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. I appreciate Chairman Green's allowing me to be here, and then also to be in Butler yesterday, where it's my hometown. I'm 4 miles from this location. My concern actually started on July the 5th when I was told that former President Trump was coming to Butler, and I said, that's great. And they said, yeah, and he's going to be at the Butler Farm Show. I said, you must mean the big Butler Fair. They said, no, the Butler Farm Show. I said, who did a site visit? The answer is, we've already made our determination. My question then was, so then what you just told me is nobody's been to that site. I will just tell you right now that what you are planning there is not proper for the crowd that's going to show up. At that point, the person on the phone said, Mr. Kelly, there'll be 6,000 or 7,000 people there. I said, well, that tells me even more about the fact that you have no idea where you're going. And historically, what has happened whenever the President Trump had come to Butler, we got 55,000 people at that rally. He said that was before, when he was president. He's no longer president. So being there, not only just myself, but also my wife, 3 of my grandchildren, and 1 of my sons, and so many friends that were there that day, I think it all comes down to the same question that we always ask when we get to these situations. What did we know, and when did we know it? And I think forever now, people are going to look at what happened and say, we knew there was something wrong. We could see it. I would just put to you that had we acted quicker, Mr. Compratore would still be alive today. President Trump would not have been wounded, and 2 other people who were that day would not have been wounded. And in a greater sense, the American people have been wounded in a way that they have lost faith, trust, and confidence in how we protect certain people. This goes far beyond that, and I appreciate you both being here, and I'll tell you what, you really have given us testimony based on what your whole careers have been about, and that is protecting people. For some reason, on July 13th, we knew something was wrong. Every person I've talked to that was there that day or responsible for protection says, we did our job. And I said, so then you're saying that somebody else didn't do their job? And the answer is, well, that's to be decided later on. So I would just say, first of all, I meant what I said. I think the American people now are deeply wounded, and the faith, trust, and confidence we need to have in our government has been fading for too long. I was there with the Pennsylvania State Police. I've talked to the Pennsylvania Police since then. Mr. Yoes, thank you for your career. But at the end of the day, we don't have the answers we need to have. And I said it earlier, and I mean it. There is no reason for Corey Compratore to be dead today. There is no reason for President Trump to have been wounded, or 2 other members in the audience that day to have been wounded, had we done what we knew before we let it go any further than that. That could have been stopped early on. Nobody can convince me that when people see somebody on the roof of a house, of a building, and pointing to him and yelling, there's somebody up there, it needs to be taken care of. And other people who were there, that eyewitnesses said they watched him go onto those grounds, and every time they said, there's something wrong, somebody is going in the wrong direction and shouldn't be there, and the answer comes down, you don't know what you're talking about. There's nobody there. So as we continue looking at this, and I think that we have a lot of testimony today, and again, I thank you for being there, but I just submit to you that the victims of that day, innocent people, none of it had to happen. We knew beforehand, and we could have prevented it, but we failed to act when we should have acted. So I appreciate your careers and everything you've done. And Chairman, I appreciate the fact that I've been able to be here today and that you came to our town yesterday, in a town that I have lived. This spot is a place I've been at many, many, many times. I just cannot understand why we didn't act when we knew there was something wrong. At the very least, they could have taken President Trump off the podium, and some of the other activity after that never would have taken place. So thank you for having me here, and thank you both. Colonel, Mr. Yoes, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it, but there is far, far more we have to learn. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We're going to do another round of questioning, and I don't know, Mr. Gray, if you're going to want to ask any other questions. Or, I'll have a couple, okay, sir. Sounds good. So you'll follow me, and then we'll go around. I just want to get back to this text message that was sent at about 20 to 25 minutes prior. That text message was a picture of Crooks. Was it a picture of him pointing the rangefinder or of him just looking suspicious?
Chairman, I have not seen the picture that was sent, so I don't know.
But
my understanding is, to the best of my briefings, it was the pictures that were initially taken by Butler ESU.
Okay, so that was the 62-minute prior. Okay. At 20, 25 minutes prior, though, someone saw him pointing a rangefinder and taking range estimation or range readings, right?
I don't want to speculate as to what he actually was doing with the rangefinder, but the rangefinder, my understanding is, was the heightened suspicion. Yes, sir.
And he was pointing it. Because a rangefinder, I guess you can have it digital and do it like this, but there are also rangefinders you look through and you have a reading. Do you know description of the rangefinder?
It was not briefed to me. I can't
okay. To you, but there was concern, and that was relayed to the command post, and that was a PSP guy in the Secret Service command post via a text message 20-something minutes before, and you think it included the fact that the guy had a rangefinder?
My understanding is, yes.
Okay. Okay. Then you mentioned that the 2 ESU guys that were in the second story, in truth, to me, it appears to be a second building behind it that got joined by all these different, the breakup of that whole complex and the intricacies of, places to hide and move around, all the little alleyways, is because they built tunnelways, or not tunnels, but that were covered between each of these different buildings. So it's actually a separate building with a amended. Connector. Yep. So there are 2 guys in that building. They leave to go look for the guy, the suspicious person.
My understanding is, yes, according to interviews.
So they were not manning, they did not have oversight on that rooftop because they were out looking for the guy.
Correct. My understanding is it was the grounds around there. To see it photographed now or on your tour yesterday without scores of people traversing from different parking areas to make ingress into the secure perimeter, that there was a concerted effort to try and identify and make contact with him.
Sure.
In conjunction with other, I was briefed that there were 2 other suspicious individuals that simultaneous to this, not terribly too far away, distance-wise. I don't have the specifics, but
But
this
those-
is all occurring contemporaneously.
But one of them, Crooks, had a rangefinder, and so they leave and they go, look, he's suspicious. That leaves that building with two sets of eyes that could have observed it, granted, by exposing themselves. And by the way, I would think they could stay in the building as opposed to being on top of it for their own sort of defilade position. I get that as a sniper works, but you got to be able to see it. So anyway, they leave. Did they was Secret Service notified that they were leaving to go look for this guy, and thus those eyes on top of the building not?
I do not know, and the other thing that I do not know is where else Butler ESU sent that information. I have not been briefed on that.
Who told them? Who told them to go look? Do you know if they were told to go look?
I do not know, sir.
We just know that they did go look.
Yes, sir. And I said a very concerted effort with all of those alcoves and all of those buildings was made. There were 2 additional officers who, again, I don't know the specifics of the timeline. I don't know the specifics of the logistics of how that information was relayed, but I'm briefed that they came and they made a very concerted effort to try and locate Crooks.
But it seems to me that that was leaving that extra set of eyes on top of the building. It would be something if I were the site commander at that point, I'd want to know 2 guys are leaving a post where they have observation on a building, and that somebody relayed that to me so that I would know, oh, wait a minute, now 2 sets of eyes that were on the building. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you pull security, if you pull your lateral security in an ambush or something. I'm talking like an Army guy now. The commander's going to know that guy's now he's got a blind spot, right? So I just want to make sure. I want to dig into that a little more. Obviously, you don't have the answer, so we'll dig elsewhere. But I find it interesting that they leave. This guy is so suspicious, has a rangefinder. They leave their post that they are manning to go look for him. Yet Secret Service, and they get told about it 20 to 25 minutes beforehand. But Secret Service still lets the president go on the stage. I'm just totally blown away by that. But again, there's more details to be had. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over now to the ranking member for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Commissioner Paris, Mr. Yoes, we're looking at a rearview mirror of what happened. A lot of good questions from both sides of the aisle. Commissioner Paris, you don't have the luxury of time. You're protecting governor, and you'll be protecting high-profile candidates in your battleground state, like right about now. I'm trying to figure out how we help you do your job a whole lot better. Mr. Kelly, his line of questioning was interesting, and I considered it important because that's his background, that's his backyard. And he asked, who decided the site of the event? It's a good question. Bigger question is, who okays, who approves the site of an event? And I come back to what I said earlier, which is one of those officers on the ground said, Lou, he said, who's in charge? The Secret Service says good or bad. Does the campaign then say good or bad, or does the campaign have the ability to override the Secret Service at an event? And I ask this question from you, Commissioner Paris, you're going to have to make these decisions here real soon. Because if I'm here where you're at today you've learned some lessons. The 13th to today, we've all learned some lessons, and you have to execute, sir. And it's not your responsibility. It's not our responsibility. It's all of us, our responsibility. And I want to know how we can help you clarify these lines of command, so to speak, to make sure that we minimize the possibilities of this happening again. Who makes the decisions? Who's in charge? What are the lessons we've learned today, gentlemen? Sir, what is it that we can do to make sure that it's not going to be on your shoulders? You're not going to be able to resign. You have to execute, please.
I appreciate your comments very much. I can say that through the governor and the legislature in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we are very supported, and we have the resources, I believe, moving forward to rise to the occasion. The Secret Service remains the agency with the most experience, traditionally, when you talk about organizational knowledge to carry this forward. Responsible for the Pennsylvania State Police, I pledge that any and all support that we can give to keep all Pennsylvanians safe, which is what 6,400 civilian and enlisted Pennsylvania State Police show up every day to do, we will do. We want a robust republic, and we want to secure people's ability to express their views, and we have worked diligently and will continue to work diligently to make sure that that happens, sir.
Commissioner Paris, you are the thin blue line, keeps us safe. Secret Service is an even thinner line that keeps, in many ways, our democracy functioning, protecting us. They have to score 100%. They cannot let one bad thing happen as they did on the 13th. I want to make sure that we know that we give the Secret Service the ability to make those decisions when it comes to the safety of our candidates and elected officials. And for the third time, I'm going to repeat those words that were told to me by an individual, law enforcement individual on the ground when he said, Lou, who's in charge? Is it the campaign or is it the Secret Service? And I'd like to get to the bottom of that and make sure it's the Secret Service that's in charge. I don't know who is in charge, and I hope to God that we do find out. And I hope it's a Secret Service, and if it is a Secret Service, that reaffirm that they are in charge, because the buck stops somewhere, and it's got to be here. This committee, the government, with us in Congress. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Colonel Paris and Mr. Yoes, I appreciate your patience in continuing through this questioning. And I would submit that I think your candor, Colonel Paris, has been very refreshing, and it paints a clear contrast from what was the testimony of the director of the Secret Service yesterday, who's now resigned. But her resignation doesn't resolve a thing. And in fact, the criminal investigation that your department is undertaking, that presumably Butler authorities may be involved in, FBI is undertaking, those don't really resolve anything. They affix criminal liability of someone who's presumably, if they acted alone, is dead. What is the most important issue is we have a national security crisis. We have right now, the only person who's been inactivated, as I understand it, is the sharpshooter who took the perp out. The people who made what appear to be unbelievably horrendous decisions. You can't even imagine. It boggles the mind, the decisions that were made. They're still in place. And we have multiple protectees moving around the country every day. And those same people, I don't even know if they've changed anything about what they're doing. Presumably you would think so, but we don't know that. So I think we need to learn as much as possible from you. I will say as a note of departure, I don't think, from what I've heard, you've made pretty clear the Pennsylvania State Police didn't do anything wrong. I don't know whether Butler County ESU might have done something wrong, so let me bear into that. Okay, all right. But it's clear to me as a bell that Secret Service, and that's, everyone's characterized it as a colossal failure because it's obvious to everyone concerned that that's the case. The two who were, I'm going to get one thing, I understand transpired while I was absent from the hearing for a bit. Do I understand that the two Butler ESU officers who, one hoisted the other to the roof line where the crooks turned and leveled the rifle at him, those were two different ESU officers than the ones that originally spotted crooks from the second floor? Is that correct?
So just to be clear, my understanding is the two officers that responded and one hoisted up the second one were not part of Butler ESU. They were two separate municipal officers who were tasked with a different responsibility.
Okay.
I would speculate as an example to say a traffic post or
Understood.
and they responded. I don't know, again, the specifics as to how they were alerted, but just to be clear, they were two separate. Yes, sir.
Okay. The ESU, the Butler ESU officers who spotted Crooks, do I understand correctly? They spotted him from the second floor of the AGR building.
That is my understanding, yes, sir.
Were they posted there in order to maintain overwatch on the roof, or were they generally assigned roving responsibility to be in the vicinity of that building?
I can't answer that, and I would defer to the Secret Service as to what the communication was and the assignment given.
Yeah, put that picture of the building up. I see that because I asked for it. I don't even know if I'll fit it in at this point. So that's, yeah, you see, so the Crooks was on the building directly facing the camera here, and you see the window open to the left. That's the second story of the AGR building where those ESU officers spotted Crooks, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Did they advise their senior command that they were departing that location to look for Crooks? Do you know that?
I do not know, sir.
Why did they stay away from that position for so long? If I understand correctly, the picture of Crooks was texted about 20, 25 minutes ahead of the shooting. Is that correct, first of all?
Could you ask me that one more time, sir? I just want to make sure, because
Was the picture of Crooks that they took, did they take that picture about and send it to up into to their command about 20, 25 minutes before the shooting?
What I want to be specific about is when the PSP member in the command post received it, and I believe that's in the vicinity of 20 to 25 minutes, with the caveat prior put on the record about a series of events, not a timeline minute by minute.
So you don't know whether they...
I don't specifically know. I believe the pictures of Crooks were taken at some point before that, when he was identified as being suspicious based on my prior testimony from the briefings that I had, because he was...
Okay, I get it. At least we've got a fairly long numbers of minutes, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Why did they not return to that post? Do you know that?
I do not know, sir. My understanding is that there was a very concerted effort at that point to actively search and locate him and dispel that suspicion.
You mentioned that you have asked for, not received, I don't know what you call it, the site plan, but from the Secret Service has not been given to you. Has there been anything else that you've asked for in the course of your investigation that's been denied or made inaccessible to you other than the site plan?
Again, I want to be clear. No, I'm not aware of anything else that we've asked for, and we have not been denied. I just believe we haven't received it yet, so I want to make sure I'm not mischaracterizing that. We asked for it, and we have yet to receive it.
Yeah, we never get denied stuff. We just never get it. My time having expired, I recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Lalotta.
Thank you, Chairman. Colonel, I want to reiterate the appreciation this committee has for your energy, your stamina, your focus, your candor. It's regrettable that some of our federal colleagues are not at the table with you today. We would have liked to extract for them some of the facts from 10 days ago. My colleagues from both sides of the aisle, I think, asked good, fair questions of you, and you gave good, fair, accurate responses to them that helps us understand July 13th a little more. It was only 10 days ago, and we're probably only in the infancy of that investigation of our oversight responsibilities, but you've provided us a lot. I want to use the remainder of my time to look forward. There's going to be a lot of conjecture about what happened and who's at fault, but putting that aside, we've talked about flaws that happened on July 13th, be it tactical flaws about communication, strategic ones like lack of drones, administrative ones like command and control and who has what authority, what are the rules of engagement. So I wanted to ask you, Colonel, and it's been said, Pennsylvania is going to have a number of more rally appearances where the public is going to interact with presidential candidates from both sides of the aisle. What are you going to do? How are you going to assert yourself in your leadership role to reduce the likelihood of an incident like this, specifically with respect to tactics? We understand that radio communications were a weakness. Do you have a perspective on looking forward, how you might command your officers in a different manner to ensure that from a tactical perspective, specifically with communications, these events are held differently in the future, sir?
So yes, I will start with referring to the testimony of Congressman Luttrell about reinforcing and reiterating to try and mitigate potential complacency. The Pennsylvania State Police maintains the Pennsylvania Criminal Intelligence Center. We're always trying to lean forward and glean as much criminal intelligence as we can, not only generated within the ranks of the Pennsylvania State Police, but our local partners, our county partners, and then through task force collaborations that we have with multiple federal agencies. I can tell you that we will not back away from the Secret Service. We will lean forward to support them, and all of the resources of the Pennsylvania State Police will be brought to bear to keep Pennsylvanians and those visiting the Commonwealth safe.
Have you considered communications specifically? Different radios, training on those radios, other communications devices, be it digital or voice or whatever. Have you considered prospectively either acquiring new technology, implementing new training, or otherwise developing tactics that allow not only state and local to communicate better with each other, but also that communication to be shared more effectively with your federal partners?
I would say in the short term, coming up to the election, there's an extreme temporal component there that would make that difficult. Maintaining critical communications during any operation, be it an investigation of a traffic crash or a major investigation, a Cavalcante manhunt, an Eric Freen manhunt, a 95 bridge disaster, a derailment of a train on the border with Pennsylvania, a 6-hour running gun battle in Juniata County. We're always looking to get better, and communications that we maintain are a critical part of that. So I can commit that we will try to get better. If there is something that these future endeavors, which we've committed at the top of the testimony to be a part of, proves that we can be better, we're always looking every day to get better.
I know that members are allowed to, through the appropriations process, advocate for more resources to come to their state and local their state and local law enforcement partners for things like communications devices. I know that I've been able to lean into that process here, and I would sure that Mr. Kelly and others from the Pennsylvania delegation would endeavor to use federal funds to help augment your ability to increase your ability to communicate among each other and also with federal partners. I want to move to strategy, thinking a little more outside the bubble in the days and weeks leading up to an event. Colonel, do you have a sense on prospectively technology that you use, like drones, other decisions you might make, like stationing somebody on a nearby high vantage point like a water tower? You've heard some feedback from some informed members here today. Are those things helpful for you to plan moving forward to seize opportunities, both technological and physical, for events moving forward?
Short answer is yes. Our undercover assets and the surveillance and intelligence gathering is something we rely on heavily. We do have some drone capabilities that we're always looking to augment, but they're a phenomenal tool, and certainly their use will only expand into the future, probably long after my career and somebody who comes well after. But we're always looking to lean forward and do the job better, sir.
And I think what I heard, Colonel, from the totality of the interactions today was administrative issues related to command and control, rules of engagement, who thought they had what authority, who thought they had to call somebody to do something. Colonel, do we have your commitment that you'll lean as far forward as possible and essentially command my negation, that you'll do everything that was within your power until you're told to stop to ensure the safety of presidential candidates?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I yield.
Gentleman yields back, and Chairman Green's going to return momentarily, so I want to keep the hearing going pending his return, and I've got a few more questions, and so I will call a third round of questioning, and let me then recognize myself for 5 minutes. Colonel Paris, did you say, I think I heard you say in the course of the hearing that you believe Mr. Crooks fired 8 shots and that 8 shell casings were recovered? Did I hear that?
Yes.
Okay. Were they all recovered in the vicinity of his body?
I'm told that they were.
When the information, let's see, the information concerning having identified Crooks as a suspicious figure was relayed, and the text message was sent to the Secret Service Command Center. PSP was present, I understand. Is that correct?
The PSP member who received those from Butler ESU?
That's what I want to clarify first. Was it a PSP member who received that text?
So I can comment that it was a PSP member who received that from Butler ESU.
And passed it and then advised Secret Service?
Immediately advised Secret Service and then passed it at their direction
to a telephone number, texted the information to a telephone number.
That's what I was briefed.
That was given by the Secret Service representative. Did the Secret Service representative indicate to whom that connected? Who was being sent the information via that number?
I do not know. Our understanding was from an interview that we conducted that it was some sort of tactical asset of the Secret Service.
Was there any comment or discussion in the command center about the advisability of keeping the president off the stage until the matter was resolved, either at that moment or later?
I do not know, and I would only underscore what I said before, the distinction between suspicion versus a threat. At that point, I think concerning, but it was still, the perspective at the time was suspicious and not yet a threat.
How did, so the information was relayed from ESU officers to a PSP officer. Is that, do I understand that correct?
Yes.
Did ESU have command officers in the command center?
That was asked earlier, and like I said, I received a briefing that my understanding was that there were Butler County representatives in the command post, but I cannot definitively tell you from any briefings that I've had who and when they were there.
Do you have any insight why the Butler ESU officers transmitted that information to a PSP representative rather than to a Butler ESU representative in the command center?
I understand that there was, the Butler ESU person from whom it came and the PSP member to whom it was sent they essentially knew one another.
Was there any mechanism in place to monitor the location presence of the ESU officers who at the second floor window and departed from there to go look for crooks? Was that any kind of communication ongoing in the command center with that, about that?
I don't know.
Right. Is that a regular practice in PSP operations to have someone monitoring the location, presence, posting, absence from posts of members of your force?
I would say in general, you need to know where your assets are deployed, but I would also say, depending on what the prior rules of engagement are, there may be a situation that could realistically, outside of the example we're discussing today, that we would expect our people to make a decision in the immediate moment to address another issue.
All right, I yield back and recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, gentlemen, thank you for being here. Something Mr. LaLota said that I want to emphasize and underline, which is, gentlemen, I hope you lean forward when it comes to making decisions, making what your gut tells you is the right decision when you're out there trying to protect American lives, especially those of candidates. The situation is an interesting one because in this committee, we have been talking about domestic terrorism as being a bigger threat to the United States than foreign terrorism. And I would imagine, based on the facts that we know them today, this is a domestic individual that God knows what motivated him to do what he's doing. He was looking up information according to what I've read. He was looking up both Democrat and Republican candidates. God knows what set him off or where he was going, or what targets he was really focused on other than possibly the opportunity. This is not good news because this is essentially a lone wolf, it would appear, that just God knows what motivated him. And I'm bringing this up because, Mr. Yoes, you represent thousands of police officers in this country. A lot of them doing the job to the best of their abilities. And yet these are challenges that are very hard to take on. How do you, based on what your officers say out there, what is it that we can do to make your job better? What is it that we can do to begin to get a grip on these lone wolf attacks that are domestically motivated and grown?
Sir, I'm not too sure I have an easy answer for you on that one. I will tell you that we live in extraordinary times right now where we've gone from talking to people to talking at people. And I think what you see over a period of time, this is eroded to a part where I think through social media or whatever events, we built a community around our own belief systems. And I think that in some ways is what empowers some people who act out on things. We may never understand why some people take the actions they do. I think we're just in some extraordinary times with so much hate in our country. And that's across the board. As a law enforcement officer, we went through that period of time of humanization of law enforcement. It certainly took a toll on us as a profession. I'll give you some examples of how dangerous it is to be a police officer right now. Last year, there were 378 officers that were shot in the line of duty. 60 died. And the number of ambush attacks on law enforcement officers were over 100. That's last year. This year, already, the first 6 months, we're at 200 officers have been shot in the line of duty.
Last year,
was 376.
and this year we're at,
This year, we're at 200 just in the first 6 months. So we're on par, or it will exceed what last year's been. There's just so much hatred in our country right now, and I think that I agree with the statements made by pretty much everyone in this room. We need to turn the rhetoric down. I think it's not serving to anyone. The hatred that we have across this country is permeating into everything we have, and that's everybody owns a little bit of responsibility with it. We need to focus on finding solutions to problems rather than blaming others for what the problems are. I know that that's not your question, but I think it.
well, actually, you are answering my question, sir.
I'm sorry, what?
You are answering my question.
Yeah. So what can be done, sir? We really need to turn the rhetoric down. We need to recognize that in reality, this is the reality when it comes to law enforcement. The majority of violent crime in this country is committed by a small percentage of people. And when we're able to separate them from the people that they prey on, we impact crime. We struggle in this country because law enforcement officers are doing their job to try and separate that. But I think our system has just so many layers in it that shows that it's fractured. And we really need to get back to the real business of protecting the people we serve. That's the end of the day, that's what's most important. And so we live in some extraordinary times. I look at what happened here on the political stage. It doesn't surprise me because this has been happening across our country, across a number of individuals.
Commissioner Paris, any thoughts?
I would just say that we endeavor to try and be the most professional that we can to earn that respect every day. I think every encounter of the millions of calls of service that troopers answer across 45,000 square miles of the Commonwealth is an opportunity to establish that relationship and be professional and do the right thing. And that's what I think, sometimes the more complex the problem, the more simple the solution in terms of keeping our focus on being professionals, doing the right thing at the right time, and showing up every day and earning it.
If I conclude by saying that thank you for your service to our country and to our communities, keeping us safe, and consider us, I think I can speak for everybody up here, consider us partners of yours. Work with us, talk to us, not at us, but with us, so we can figure out how to solve some of these issues. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My time is up.
Gentleman yields back, and all time having expired in the second round of questioning, I would yield to the ranking member for a closing statement if you have one, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do. And again, to repeat myself, thanks our witnesses for being here today, and I want to thank our chairman for calling this most important hearing. July 13th was a tragedy. Can't let it happen again. And that's why we're here today, oversight to get the facts. And I believe that we have started getting some facts. A whole lot more work to be done, but we're going in that direction. We do have a lot of questions for the Secret Service, for local law enforcement. And as Mr. Ivey said, the locals didn't get a lot of notice when it came to this campaign event for a presidential candidate. We need to do better. The American public is relying on us to get some answers. They want to make sure that, that we're doing the best we can to guard our democracy by guarding our candidates to office. And as we get closer to the November election, like you both have said, we got to watch the rhetoric. We got to tone it down. And I've heard those words in this committee. Right after January 6th, we echoed those same words from both sides. Tone it down, folks. And we're still there. We can do better. We can do better for this country, for our democracy. And we need to again set an example for the rest of the world. All of us together, we can do this. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I yield.
I thank the gentleman, and I'm going to give the chairman's closing statement for him, but it's prepared here, and I think that is the appropriate way to end. Before I do that, I want to say thank you to the witnesses, especially Colonel Paris. I will say that in the North Carolina Highway Patrol is an institution in my state that I have not, until I had occasion to serve in the legislature and then subsequently run for Congress and serve districts that have constantly changed in North Carolina, and I have seen institutionally how the State Highway Patrol has then fed the sheriff's offices over the course of time with the elected sheriffs who've come up in that institution. And I don't know that much about your organization, but you remind me of the fine men and women of the North Carolina Highway Patrol, and I really do appreciate your candor. Tomorrow, the director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, will be testifying before the Judiciary Committee, on which I also serve. And I hope he'll be candid. I believe there are moments when the sanctity of criminal investigations needs to be tempered by the fact that the nation needs answers to a national security crisis, as I suggested before. You have been candid while still protecting the sanctity of the investigations that are ongoing, or of which your agency is a part, and I appreciate that very much. So during this hearing, we got the news that Director Cheatle resigned. After refusing to give straightforward answers to Congress and the American people about the Secret Service's failures on July 13, seeing the chairman return, I'm going to pause and let him give his statement, which I had commenced.
You are closing for me there? However necessary as it was, Director Cheatle's indisputably overdue resignation is only the first step on the path to accountability and reform. Today's hearing was a vital step in obtaining more information about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, but Congress has a lot of work ahead of us. I think today, as we've questioned these professionals who've served their communities and their states for their lifetime, we've discovered a lot of facts, particularly about the operation. Yesterday when we were on the site, we learned about the planning failures. Today we've learned about conducts of the operation failures, communications and things like that, people moving and maybe not notifying, those kinds of things. Secret Service making a decision to not stop the president when a guy's using a rangefinder and is described as suspicious looking. I just boggles the mind. We're going to continue to investigate the failures of the Secret Service. Our mission is very clear. We've got to get to the bottom of it. This can't ever happen again. I want to thank both of you for serving and for a very long testimony today. Thanks for sticking around and letting us. We're going to have lots of other people come in here, and we're going to get granular on all of this stuff. But this is the closest that anyone's come to taking the life of a president or a presidential candidate in over 4 decades. it can never happen again. It just simply cannot. So we're going to continue our fact-finding to figure out exactly how it happened, much like a after-action review would. Identify all those areas and ensure that Secret Service, whomever steps up to take that leadership role now, does so and addresses these things. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And if there are members, what often happens in our committee hearing, they'll have questions that come to them. They have a few days to generate written questions. Would you be open to us sending those to you and you just send a letter back with the answers in writing? Okay, thank you. I appreciate the affirmative nods. Again, thanks for being here. And I think both sides of the aisle did an amazing job. And you made some closing comments, Mr. Gray. Did you get a chance to? Okay, I'm sorry I missed them. I'm sure they were.
Second shot, I can repeat myself.
I'll go watch the tape. The committee stands adjourned.